cable news was consumed Monday with the surreal spectacle of a former Trump campaign aide ranting about the Russia investigation across multiple networks. But by the end of the day, the focus was less on what Sam Nunberg said and more on whether it was right to put a potentially troubled person on live TV. It seemed like an explosive development, an obscure former Trump aide threatening to defy special counsel Robert Mueller.
I'm not going.
You're not going?
I'm not going to the grand jury.
But in a flurry of appearances, Sam Nunberg struggled to explain his beef with Mueller's investigation. At first, he called a subpoena for campaign-related emails unreasonable.
And I'm not going to cooperate. What do I have to spend 80 hours going over my emails?
Then he suggested it's a frame-up that he wants no part of.
Because they're trying to set up a perjury case against Roger Stone, and I'm not going to have it. Roger's my mentor. Roger is like family to me, and I'm not going to do it.
For the record, that would be Trump confidant Roger Stone, who, along with Nunberg, departed the campaign early on. Through it all, Nunberg lobbed insults at just about everyone else associated with Trump. As for the president himself, he offered conflicting opinions.
It is the biggest joke to ever think Donald Trump colluded with the Russians.
Do you think that they have something on the president?
I think they may.
By the end of the day, though, Nunberg's defiance had softened.
Maybe I'll just give them my password, my email password, because what do I have to go
So then you're going to comply.
Then I would comply, yes.
Possibly because Nunberg had another reason to be mellow.
Yeah. I have smelled alcohol in your breath.
Well, I have not had a drink.
You haven't had a drink, so that's not...
No.
Anything else?
No.
No.
No. Besides my meds.
Okay.
Antidepressants, is that okay?
Maybe not. Over at Fox Business Channel, Charlie Gasparino passed on interviewing Nunberg because he believed he'd been drinking.
I just watched him on MSNBC and CNN, and the man needs help. I didn't feel it was my professional obligation to blow this guy up.
Seems like Nunberg took care of that himself. I should probably specify that not all the pushback came from Fox News or Fox Business Channel. Kai Ryssdal, the host of Marketplace, said that basically cable TV should not be doing what they just did. Clara Jeffrey of Mother Jones, the editor, also took issue with it. My own take on this is that you didn't quite know how bad he was and how far gone he seemed to be until the interviews had wrapped up. And I think it's tough to second-guess people for booking him initially. But just my 2 cents. Callie, what's your take?
My take is that often they put some people on who are clearly unstable, and they go with it. And typically, there are people who are talking about race issues, let me just say. And I'm not talking about people who have fundamental differences. I'm talking about unstable. And they get it, they knew it before, and they let it go. In this case, I do think after the first interview, you wouldn't know till after somebody interviewed him. So I can't say if you were the first person, you know, you just...
Which I think was
that's
Katie
a hot
Tur,
story,
right?
yeah, and then you go with it. And then after that, then I think people really have to look and say, now what are we doing here? Because he was clearly unstable.
I wasn't troubled by any of it. You would not put a civilian on in these circumstances. You would not hold a person up to that kind of humiliation unless they were a former high Trump campaign official who apparently has received a subpoena and the attention of the special prosecutor. Given those facts, you let the man on and talk. I watched quite a bit of the clips. He was obviously out of control. I honestly don't think he was as bad as a lot of the commentators have said. I don't really see any problem with this, and I'm surprised it's an issue.
Even if he's been drinking, for example?
You know, he denied it. He denied it. He said he hadn't been.
I think if you smell alcohol on the breath of your guests, that's when you call it. Or maybe you just tape the interview and then you evaluate after whether or not to air it. I think at that point you're taking advantage of somebody who's in a low spot. That said, this is what the media does, right? And we live in a reality TV culture. We have a reality TV president. The media eats up his every Twitter outburst, and this doesn't surprise me at all.
I do think it is noteworthy that the way that the interviews rolled out, I think there are a lot of media observers, people like us, who are looking at this and seeing the totality of it. Mm-hmm. Remember, anyone who's watching at home is probably not following going from network to network to jump between this. They're seeing one choice, one interview most likely. I think it is also noteworthy that the early interviews in the day were by phone, like to Jake Tapper, when you could sort of detect erratic behavior, but you weren't going to be smelling any alcohol in any breath, right? So that's another sort of defense I would lay up. I have a lot of sympathy for what Dan is saying. This is not Joe off the street. This is someone who has been subpoenaed and been a source to a lot of stories, to a lot of reporters. He was previously leaking that information, we know, to Axios and to the New York Times. He should be able to stand for himself. I do think, though, that even though there's nothing wrong with it, I think I would question the choices as the day went on to devote that much time to it, because I don't think we were learning anything new at that point, and I think we had an idea something was up.
And I think the idea of taping and then assessing might have been a good way to go.
But that's tough with the reality of cable TV, right?
Well,
You've got this
they got
gaping
24
law
hours.
of 24 hours.
No, it's not that gaping. They'll wait an hour, and then they still got it.
I think Eric Wemple of the Washington Post made a very good point when he said, actually, the cable shows did a pretty good job of each successive show was drilling down more specifically on some of the issues that were on the table here. And I think that served the public.
Josh mentioned Axios a moment ago. Axios wrote a piece in which, among other things, they said, this is one example of why the public hates the media. Do you guys think that's fair?
I would say the public has a love-hate relationship with the media. I mean, the public loves to hate the media, yet they can't turn away, right? It's like a train wreck that they can't stop watching, and it's all about ratings, and people demand salacious stuff, and there's nothing that the general public loves more, frankly, than to see someone decompose on live television.
I think it's a little bit rich coming from Axios,
Exactly.
whose founders were previously the founders of Politico, and which have made two very good businesses off of deep sourcing and the sort of media environment that this is a part of. I think it was it's a legitimate point maybe from someone else. But
we were speculating in the newsroom that maybe that was the line Axios was taking because they wanted to preserve their deep sources.
Since he had previously leaked to Axios, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the day that we take ethics lessons from Mike Allen of Axios is the day we ought to just pack it in and go home.